Hi everyone, welcome back to our second episode of Design Your Own Airplanes. In our last video, we learned how to build this simple and inexpensive glider. We also learned how to fine-tune it to get a good flight. Hopefully by now, you've got a lot of ideas about what you want your own model planes to look like and how you want them to fly. Today, we're going to be learning how to make those ideas into reality. Now, I could teach you a bunch of complicated math right off the bat and show you graphs and charts and stuff, but it's only our second episode, and I don't want you to get bored too quickly. Instead, I'll give you a crash course on 3 engineering concepts that are most important for designing gliders and demonstrate their effects for real. Our first objective for this video is to take a look at speed and learn the basics of what makes a plane fast or slow. Our second objective is to choose a shape for the wing and tail of our plane, and from there, determine how to distribute the weight. You may recall from our last video that planes don't fly well when there's too much weight on the front or the back. Our third objective for this video is to learn how to design a good tail that can effectively keep the plane tracking straight during flight. In our later videos, we're going to be taking a more detailed look at exactly why these concepts work, and learning how to use that knowledge to push the limits of our planes. For now though, we're just going to jump right into learning how to use these concepts to make our own designs. The first engineering concept we're going to learn is the wing cube loading. The wing cube loading is a relationship between the weight of a model airplane, the size of its wing, and its speed. To put it simply, lightweight airplanes with large wings fly slow and feel very light and floaty. Heavy airplanes with small wings, however, fly fast and seem to slice through the air. The wing cube loading is a parameter that's used to measure an airplane's speed and floatiness. The wing cube loading is calculated by taking the weight of a model airplane in ounces and dividing it by the wing area in square feet, raised to the 1.5 power. In metric, the weight is measured in grams, and the wing area is measured in square decimeters. A lower number means that a plane flies slow and feels very floaty, while a higher number means that a plane flies fast and seems to slice through the air. When we built this plane in the last video, I told you that it should weigh somewhere between 90 and 120 grams. That's because I wanted it to have a wing cube loading somewhere between 3 and 4. This is an example of a plane that has a wing cube loading of 2.5. It flies slow and feels very floaty. Slow flying planes are easier to throw, so I would recommend a plane with a low wing cube loading for your first few designs, until you get the hang of it. One downside of planes with low wing cube loadings, though, is that they get blown around in the wind more easily. This is an example of a plane that has a wing cube loading of 16. It has a smaller wing and more weight attached. It flies faster and needs to be thrown harder. One advantage of a plane with a high wing cube loading, though, is that it doesn't get pushed around in the wind as easily, which is good when you're flying outdoors. You can experiment with different wing cube loadings by adding or removing weight from your plane, or by switching out your wing for a bigger or smaller one. At this point, we should also note that adding more weight onto your glider actually does not change the distance that it flies. That's not true for powered airplanes, however. We're going to be talking a little bit more about why that is in a later video. Adding more weight onto your glider will, however, decrease your flight time. This is because, since you're flying faster, you'll cover the distance in a shorter amount of time. Now that we know how to make an airplane fly fast or slow, we're going to learn about how to design the shape of the wing and tail. You can make blueprints of your wing and tail by drawing them on grid paper and adding dimensions. You can also make airplane blueprints by using computer-aided design software. I found that the CAD program Onshape has a very good free subscription. Each design for the shape of the wing and the tail requires that the weight of the plane be distributed differently. You may recall from our last video that planes don't fly well when there's too much weight on the front or the back. We can tell how the weight is distributed on the plane using a concept called the center of gravity, or the CG. The CG is the single point on an object through which the weight force of that object can be considered to act. Consider this pencil. I've marked its center of gravity right here, in black marker. This is the point at which the weight force of the pencil can be considered to act. The center of gravity of an object can be found by balancing it on your finger. When you move the object so that the center of gravity is no longer over your finger, then it just falls off. When the center of gravity is directly over your finger, the upward force counteracts the weight force, and the pencil balances. When the center of gravity is not over your finger, however, there's nothing counteracting the weight force, and the pencil just falls off. Adding more weight onto one side of the pencil shifts the center of gravity towards that side, since there's more weight force acting there. Like the pencil, airplanes also have a center of gravity, which can be found by balancing the plane on your finger. You can move the center of gravity of your plane further forwards, either by putting more weight onto the front of the plane, taking weight off of the back of the plane, or shifting weight that is already on the plane further forwards. Similarly, you can move the center of gravity of your plane further backwards, either by adding weight onto the back of the plane, taking weight off of the front of the plane, or shifting weight that is already on the plane further backwards. Now we know how to use the concept of the center of gravity to determine how the weight is distributed on our plane, and how to redistribute the weight to move the center of gravity forwards or backwards. But that still leaves us with the question, where should the center of gravity be? We can find the answer to that question using an online calculator. This online calculator, which I've provided a link to in the description, can be used to estimate the ideal location of the center of gravity using the dimensions of the wing and tail. To use the calculator, enter the dimensions of your new design in the fields in the upper left, following the diagram at right. You can use any units you want, as long as they're all the same. For gliders, you can select T-tail for the stabilizer efficiency. Next, you'll need to select a static margin. We'll be taking a closer look at this concept in a later video, but for now, a value of 5% should be about right. Once you click the button, the calculator will estimate the ideal location for your center of gravity, shown here. Also notice that the calculator tells you the aspect ratio of your plane and estimates the location of the neutral point. We're going to be taking a closer look at both these concepts in a later video. You may have noticed that some planes have the horizontal stabilizer in the front instead of in the back. This is what's called a canard. I've put a link in the description to another version of the online calculator for planes with canards. Keep in mind though, these calculators only provide an estimate of where the center of gravity should be, so that you can get it in approximately the right location when you build your plane. With this in mind, I'd advise you to leave some room to move the weight forwards or backwards to adjust the center of gravity if necessary. If you want to read more about how exactly the online calculators estimate the location of the center of gravity, I've put a link in the description to an article on FliteTest that gives a good summary of the math behind it. Now we've learned how to design planes to fly at different speeds, how to design different shapes for the wing and tail, and how to distribute the weight correctly. There's still one more engineering concept we need to learn though, and that is how to make sure that the tail can effectively stabilize the plane and keep it flying straight. The basic premise here is that longer tails and larger fins do a more effective job at stabilizing the plane and keeping it flying straight, whereas smaller fins and shorter tails do a less effective job. Planes that have larger wings also need to have more effective tails to stabilize them. In a later video, we're going to be taking a closer look at what exactly the implications of a more or less effective tail are, and how that actually plays out in flight. For now, we're going to be using a measurement called the tail volume to judge the effectiveness of our tail for a given wing size. If we look back at the online calculator, the tail volume for the horizontal stabilizer is displayed here. A larger number means that the tail is more effective at stabilizing the airplane for a given wing size, whereas a smaller number means that it's less effective. According to FliteTest, most model airplanes have a horizontal stabilizer volume somewhere between 0.35 and 0.8. You can experiment with different tail volumes and see how they affect the way that your airplane flies. If you feel like your plane has a tendency to randomly steer up or down, even when you're sure that you're throwing it straight and level, and you have the weight distributed as best you can, it's possible that your tail is not effective enough. You can make your tail more effective by making it longer, or by using bigger fins. On the other hand, if you feel like there's too much weight on the back of your plane, you can compensate by making the tail shorter and the fins smaller. Like the horizontal stabilizers, the vertical stabilizer also has a tail volume. While the online calculator does not provide this number, the FliteTest article that I linked in the description walks you through how to calculate it yourself. If your vertical stabilizer is roughly the same size as your horizontal stabilizers though, or slightly larger, you should be fine. So that's it. Today, we've learned 3 engineering concepts to design your own model airplanes. We've learned how to use the wing cube loading to design planes to fly at different speeds. We've learned how to design different wing and tail shapes, and how to use the center of gravity to ensure that the weight is distributed correctly. And we've learned how to use tail volumes to design tails that can effectively keep our planes flying straight. In our upcoming videos, we're going to be taking a closer look at exactly how these concepts work, and how to apply that knowledge to push your airplane designs to the limits. I hope you're excited to start designing your own airplanes. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos, and thanks for watching.